Greetings and welcome back to TaleSpire. I'm Aaron with Nordic Forge Games, and today we're going to be hopping back in with another really cool, fun tutorial to help you guys pump up and beef up your building powers in this amazing tool. So let's get it started. Well, what are we going to be talking about today? I'll tell you what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about elevation. That's how high things are. Up in the sky. I'm sorry. I'm in a silly, goofy mood today. I'm also sick, so if I sound a little hoarse, or if you hear something in my mouth, it is a Ricola cough drop. This video is not sponsored by Ricola, but they are delicious, and they will make your throat feel better. So put one in your mouth. What was I talking about? Oh, that's right. Elevation. We're going to talk about adding verticality and depth to your board in TaleSpire. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Thanks for watching. Definitely go back and check out our first two videos. We cover a lot of the fundamentals that we're building up to bigger and bigger and cooler stuff. And so to briefly recap what we covered in our last video, we talked about creating and storing and using your own custom assets, building things and then replicating them to be used again in further builds. And I wanted to say a really massive thank you to you guys for interacting with the last video, commenting, liking, sharing. It really means a lot to me to see you guys. It makes making the videos really fun because I'm excited to interact with you guys some more. And so as you can see, I have completely emptied out our build space. I have backed up and saved the things we worked on in the last video, but I wanted to start fresh on a new board today because we're going to be building a little bit bigger. We're going to be getting a little bit crazier. So without further ado, let's start building. 14, I'll take it because I've got a +3 strength bonus, boy. Oh, another handy tip before we get started. If you ever get lost on your board and trying to figure out how to get back to the center, F2 snaps you back to the beginning. All right, guys, so we're talking about elevation today. We're going to grab our handy grassland tile, the big 8x8 boy that we usually build with. And we're just going to set them down on the ground, maybe pick it up just a little bit so it's off the floor. And you know what? I'm going to actually put down 4 of these bad boys and make a 16x16 build area. All right, so you're building something, you're building on a flat plane, and you know you want your elevation to increase, right? Well, it would be easy to go ahead and take some tiles, and it's not a bad idea, but you can make steps. You know what I mean? You could go and I want to make a hill, and you could start adding blocks that slowly increased up to your highest point. That's one way to do it, and it works for a lot of people. But we're doing this the Nordic Forge way, and I'm going to show you guys what works best for me. And we've also talked a little bit about minor elevation and how to spread out those random 1x1 tiles to make things look more interesting. That's from our first video. But when we're thinking about larger scale boards, bigger set pieces, cliffs and hills and things like that, and the first step in doing that is setting your highest point first. And to do that, we're going to use our control key again, right? Our faithful control key. And from where our lowest point is to where our highest point is, we can hold down control and we can lift this board up into the air. Another handy tip, when you're holding a board and you hold down control and you're not sure where it is, there's little dotted lines on the corners of the piece and you can see if it's going to snap where you need it to. So right there, it's going to be too close to me. I want it lined up with that back left square. I can see that's the exact right spot I want it in, and then I can drop it. Boom. This is going to be my highest point. Yes, it may have some terrain on top of it. Yes, the terrain may go even higher. But I'm picking a point that I need to start building up to from the bottom. All right, and then step 2 is we're going to start blocking in our chunky, messy terrain. At this point, I would not be concerned with what it looks like. We're going to start blocking in terrain pieces, and we're going to block those in where we think our elevation is going to be. Just place them where you think you want your cliffs to be, where you want your cliff face to be. So what I like to do is kind of look at the board from 2 different angles, the front and the side, and see exactly how far I want it to protrude. I want it to hang over the side just a little bit to give the illusion that it continues. And I'm going to drop a rock down. All right, now what I could do is we could use our clipping mode with control, and I could just keep setting this rock down, but it's going to create a really strange looking texture. Now it's not bad. You could just continue to clip rocks in like this. And it's a little bit noticeable, the pattern there. We want to break that pattern up. And the easiest way to do that is just hit your rotate button, drop in another one at the same height. Rotate again, drop another rock in. Rotate again, drop another rock in. And I'm not moving them up and down. I'm just kind of picking out where I want this cliff to be And I'm staying in control. I'm not leaving clipping mode because I want these rocks to just sort of meld in with each other. And even though this is our initial pass, you still want to think about making some fun shapes with your rocks. For example, this negative space here where the grass, where you can see the grassland tile going up closer to the rocks. See that interesting shape? It's not just flat across. That goes back to our last video where we were discussing making sure not everything is on a 90-degree angle. You're getting some undulation and some differences in shapes. And even though we're rotating our rock as we're placing it, yes, it's much less noticeable of a pattern. There are still some patterning issues, and we're going to take care of those as we move along. I'm also being mindful of how this tile is clipping through my rock to make it look natural. I'm going to move it up until it feels right and there's not a strange corner poking out. And then here we're going to do the same thing. We're going to rotate one time each. And what I'd like to do is have a stepped cliff, like in Fellowship of the Ring, where they're walking along that mountain pass in the snow, and they're just kind of squeezed up against the edge of the mountain pass. Kind of what I'm thinking about. All right, so see how that corner of the woodline tile is this really hard angle here? When you flip around your rock to make your next placement, you can just make sure it's high enough to cover that corner up. We're just going to keep moving along here. All right, so I like how the rocks have come up to this upper tile, but I would like some more rocks that step down again lower. So I'm going to use my double left click to duplicate a rock. I can also just grab it from my favorites bar, and I'm going to push it down even further because I want another level of cliff that sticks out. Really quickly, not worrying too much about what it looks like, but making sure to rotate to avoid patterning, to avoid repetitious patterns in the rocks. And if we wanted to make this scalable, you can actually take stones and find a side that looks more like a step, see, like this, and then slowly move it up to create a natural stone staircase. So you can do a lot with these rocks. All right, and so just like that, guys, I tried to make sure there were minimal cuts here so you can actually see me building this rocky cliff because it's really quick and easy. You don't have to be intimidated by doing it. And that really is it for step 2. Your chunky, messy terrain can go on really fast, but I usually just stick with one rock to sketch out the basic shape of what I want. And when you're ready, you can move on to step 3, which is refining the overall shape. And we're going to do that by starting to add smaller terrain and more detailed pieces with very specific placement. Now, this is where we're going to start trying to remove some of the repetitious patterns that we may see. And I'm going to start out by trying to go ahead and figure out the rest of this staircase. We have it going up, and I feel like that's pretty good. How about that? There we go. Now we can see this natural stair coming down. Whether it was carved by dwarves or erosion, no one will ever know. So keep in mind, you don't have to use the same pieces that I'm using. In our second video, we discussed your style, what you think looks cool and looks badass. Use that. So again, remember the step we're on. We've already blocked in our shape, so now we need to slow down. We need to be placing things a little more deliberately. All right, the reason I'm looking at these pieces here, as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 little caves, and they all look really similar. And that's what my eye is being drawn to. And I don't like that they're so similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these medium-sized rocks, press them in, and make sure they're on different sides, and just give those areas a little more attention. All right, now I'm really making sure here that the rock I'm using below is rotated to a different face than the one above, or we're going to get another sort of pattern duplication. And you can do that by doing it multiple times, moving it up and down, and creating what looks like a completely new rock. We're just placing these in positions that do two things. They should be pleasing to you, and they should create a more natural look. If things start to look like they're repeating themselves, slow down. You can overdo it real easy at this part by using the same asset, not rotating it enough. I'm going to stop for just a second and look at this cliff a little bit more. These two are still similar, but I like that they're on two separate sides. So I'm not going to mess with those too much. They're going to be even more blended whenever we start adding bushes and foliage and vines and things like that. I'm going to go grab our little Viking guy. Yeah, and we're just going to drag him around and set him in different places. It makes sense for what I'm doing. It's not too small, it's not too big, or it's just as big or just as small as I want it to be. All right, so he moves through here pretty well. You can set him on these ledges, which is nice. And this is another thing that I'll probably talk more about in the future, but doing this frequently while you build, just playing, you know, as if you just have a little action figure running around. This is really important because the playability of your board and your asset is paramount, right? Yeah, if it looks cool, but you can't have your friends run around in it easily. My background is in wargaming terrain, you know, building with foam core and plastic and wooden dowel rods and popsicle sticks. So I tend to think of it in the same way. You know, I tend to go, okay, if I was looking at a board I had on my kitchen table dry, you know, with glue drying on it, what would I want to change before the glue dries? Great. So I think now's a good time to start moving on to smaller rocks. The smaller rocks here that we used in our little second video when we made our campground, these rocks are really easy to see duplicated, so use them sparingly. But these stones here are really great. And if you've ever been at the base of a mountain, there's always gravel at the ground because of the mountain eroding over time. And so you see these piles of stones at the base of cliffs and things like that. We'll try to find a few spots to pepper in some more rocks. And when I say pepper in, I mean just like you're peppering a steak. You know, just enough. You don't want to do it too much, just enough flavor. I think it's fair to say we could start adding some foliage and greenery to this cliff. The other thing I'm noticing here, and this is something that I just forgot, but we used these tiles at the very bottom of our cliff, but the grassland tiles are not what I want to use. So let's say, same for you. If you actually don't want to use the grassland tile, you want to use actually lush grass or something like that. So you could just lay it on top. But at this point, we're going to lose some of the detail that we've already crafted. So we can just take this tile and move it down a full step. And then take our 2x2 tiles and just lay them on top. This, along with the undo button, you're never going to dig yourself such a big hole you can't get out. You're not going to mess up anything. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing up here on this top block. I'm just going to add some grassland tiles, 8x8. There we go. Again, you guys see me, you guys probably saw me in the last video, utilize this tree. And it works even better in large areas because it is a large asset with a lot of different fun colors and sides. I'm rotating this tree, clipping it through the ground, and trying to create some interesting shapes. And just keep in mind, as before, we don't want to overdo this, and we don't want to cover up our previous work, right? I could cover up that whole dark stone we used, and then all of the time placing that stone is just erased. But what we can do is we can enhance that dark stone, and we can sort of soften the edges between it and the rest of the rocks. All right, and then along with these bushes, I'm going to use our little hedge block here. This is going to add a different color green and some different shapes. So moss likes to grow up underneath stuff in cool, dark places. Realistically thinking, look at the rocks you have that hang over. For example, right here. And push that moss behind it, raise it up, and make it look like it's moss that's clinging underneath there. And you'll know when you're doing it right because you're going to start forgetting where those repetitious things are. You may still see them, you know, like these big flat rocks do look similar, but there's so much that your eye can look at that's interesting, especially this down here. This is my favorite area, I think. Now we can add some of those ferns. Now, with ferns, I'm bad about trying to push them up in existing bushes, but these do really shine. Push them away from other stuff, and you put them off by themselves. So, for instance, out here in the grass. And I feel like with those, we've kind of completed step 3 by refining our overall shape. So the silhouette things make when we look at them. Being able to see where the shadows are, where all of the foliage is going to be. And now we can move on to step 4, which is embellishment, right? We're going to embellish and add really small details. We're going to start adding that undulation. We're going to start making the terrain look like it's not just on a flat board. But most importantly, our faithful and trusty 1x1 grass tile. All right, and so pushing and pulling, right? We're going to push things down, we're going to pull things up. The corners of your board is a great area to go up higher or down lower. So for instance, I did the opposite here. I went down here with some variation and I went up there. I'm really liking how this looks. I like these 3 flat blocks here, but there's one problem with those blocks and they're just identical. So what I'm going to do is remove a couple of them. So just rotate it till it looks a little bit more randomized. And if you see an area that you think needs just a little extra pop of color, a little bit here. There we go, maybe like that, maybe like that, maybe like that. Every so often, a tile like that, just sort of off by itself in a flat area, will look really natural and cool. So see, from the air, we can really start to see now. This, even from top down, square, this is definitely not flat. There's definitely some different shapes going on, different colors going on, even though we're using the same grass business. We're using enhanced grass technique, elevation education. Yep, that's going to be the name of this video, elevation education. All right, so continuing with our step 4, our embellishments, right? Roadways, it's really fun to put these mud tiles. The best way to do this is just continually rotate this tile so you don't get a lot of the same shape, and then raise and lower it a lot. It'll look more natural and cool, like you meant to do it, even though you have no clue what you're doing, which, by the way, I don't. I'm super thrilled to have you guys interested, but when people are like, I wish I could build like that, I'm like, you can. I don't know what I'm doing. So my goal is to help you guys feel as confident and as awesome as you guys make me feel. Let's do some mushrooms. I like mushrooms. Mushrooms go really good in like low areas a lot of times. Now, the one thing we're not doing in this video is populating this with like a whole lot of environmental storytelling, like camps and boxes and lights and ladders and ruins, because that is the type of stuff we're going to get into later. So now I think it's time for some trees. Actually, we need to put some outcroppings, right? So part of our embellishment is not just adding small stuff, but adding large stuff, like rock outcroppings that are going to make your board just a little bit more interesting. Placing trees, knowing where they're going to go and what they're going to look like overall is pretty difficult. Find where your stumps are going to go first. I know I want this mossy stump by these mushrooms, and I want this area pretty wooded, so I'm going to put another stump here. One thing is, make sure these trees, as you place them, their stumps are not at the same height. Have the tree, it looks like it's setting here, but the roots are dipping down into this low spot. I really like that. And I'm going to make this tree a lot taller. So, handy tip again. If you hold down the X key when you have a thing selected, it will snap automatically to stuff. And setting trees on top of each other is difficult for me, because if I'm trying to match it up and it's just not working, if you hold down X and you're near where you're going to snap it, it'll snap right where it should go, and you can still while you're placing it, spin it around. The same key you would use to put things on your favorites bar, but it's while you're holding an asset before you place it. Hold down X and then snap it where you want it. Now, if you want a tree taller, you can snap it to the top of the tree, and then you can use Control to bring it down and make it look more natural, rotate it, that sort of thing. And I think that's what I'm going to do right here. And I'm rotating these trees as well. Even though they're very good at not looking like they're repeating, there are minor changes. So make sure you rotate them as you're placing them. One thing you do too is don't even worry about stumps, right? You just clip it into the ground. And customizing trees is fun. A lot of times you can take something like this, clip it to the top, and push it down. It looks like branches, sticking out, so the tree's a little bit more wild. Got a wild tree. And you do the same technique if you want it right in the center. Hold X, drag it down, and then rotate it in different positions till you find what you like. So then you have something that looks like it's not right out of the box, but it took you 2 seconds to make. I want our road to continue. In my original sort of homebrew D&D world, there is this ancient roadway that crosses across multiple continents. It's this massive, long thing that is very dangerous to traverse, and it's called the Ruined Road. I actually have some tiles of it up on Tales Tavern. The idea is that, this is part of the road, this staircase. Let's go get our boy. Where is he? You know what? Where's the dwarves? This Viking's cool, but you know what's cooler than a Viking? A dwarven Viking. Yeah. Here he is. Tungsten Chiselbeard at your service. You gotta have your brew when you're on the road, traveling alone. Sorry, guys. I get really into this stuff. Making sure he can pass through the different areas. All of this feels natural, and he's able to move through it fluidly and set his miniature at different locations. All right, guys, so that about does it for the video. That does it for today's elevation education. That's definitely what I'm naming the video. And I hope if you guys built along with me, you made something really cool that you can be proud of and you're excited about. And again, just want to thank you guys again for all of your support, for watching the video, making it to the end. And if this is the first time you're here, I would love to have you as a subscriber. Make sure to like, make sure to share this video. I'm trying to grow a fun community of people who are really into tabletop RPGs, creative stuff, gaming in general. So leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know if you have any questions. Check out all the Nordic Forge Games assets up right now on TaleStavern.com. Stuff you can download and add to your own game. That's it, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Keep being awesome. Keep building awesome things. And until we meet again,